everyone, it's Mostly Casual Commander. I'm BK, and today's game has the pre-con Warhammer decks, as well as a special guest. With the Swarmlord, Chris is going to crash his Tyranid army into his opponents, and who cares if they die, am I right? I'm playing Szarekh, the Silent King, with a sweet graveyard and artifacts matter plan. Let's hear from our special guest.
Hello everybody, my name is Ryan, and I run a YouTube channel called Command Point, where we talk about strategies and tactics for Warhammer 40k Kill Team, a squad versus squad skirmish wargame. Kill Team is a great way to experience the 40k universe on the tabletop without having to build and paint an entire army. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to check out Kill Team and to check out my channel. Today I am running Inquisitor Greyfax, encouraging me to go wide and swing, while Hunt for Heresy lets me tap a creature in enemy controls and generate a clue token. With that out of the way, I'll give it back to BK.
Thank you, friend. And lastly, we have Kyle playing Abaddon the Despoiler, who's embracing chaos by enabling all sorts of cascade triggers. Meatball appears in this video, and be sure to follow us on Discord, link in the description. Welcome, Ryan from Command Point. Thanks for coming today, and look forward to playing a game with you, man.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's get the War of the Pre-Con started. Chris will drop a command tower as his land for turn, right into a sweet new art Soul Ring. Gotta love that turn 1 Soul Ring, am I right? I'll play a Swamp as my land for turn and say go over to Ryan. He'll play a Plains with a tank on it. What? Over to Kyle, he'll drop a Mountain as his land for turn, and back over to Chris. He plays a Temple of Abandon, allowing him to scry the top card, and he puts that on the bottom. And then he casts Cultivate, getting an island to the battlefield and a forest to his hand. And then he wonders why did he play Temple of Abandon before that. I play a Swamp with laser beams on it, and then an Arcane Signet that's definitely Necron inspired. I pass the turn to Ryan.
Ooh. I mean,
nothing.
He plays the best looking Evolving Wilds there is, and he passes the turn over to Kyle, who plays another Mountain as his land for turn, followed by a Talisman of Indulgence, which is only one of 3 talismans that came in that pre-con deck. Love those talismans. Chris plays a Forest, and then he casts his commander on turn 3, the Swarmlord. I'm assuming that's how Tyranids sound. He gets 2 +1/+1 counters on that bad boy, and I play a Swamp on my turn, followed by my commander that I can definitely pronounce his name. Szarekh. Ryan, help.
Warhammer help. You can just call him Silent King.
That's exactly what I called him correctly the first time I said it. We're pretty sure it's Szarekh, but if you think it's different, do that thing in the comments where it's like a mix of letters and dashes and all that. All I'm saying is that this side of the table, we have commanders out.
Yep.
What are you guys doing?
I have no blue mana.
Yeah. A wise man once said, "Get good, scrub." Sorry, Kyle, you're doing great. Ryan plays a tapped Port Town as his land for turn, and he passes over to Kyle. Kyle pings himself 1 using Talisman, and he casts Dark Ritual, gaining 3 black pips of manas. And with that, he'll cast Karn the Betrayer, whom I hear values loyalty quite highly.
Interesting.
Weird.
That's a whole lot of words. I'm not gonna read them.
Kyle then passes, and Chris will play a Game Trail as his land for turn, revealing a mountain. Then he'll play Turvagon with X equaling 5. So this will draw him a card, and Turvagon will have 5 +1/+1 counters on it. Then he attacks me for no reason. You're telling me I'm taking 7 commander damage right now?
Yeah.
Bro, that sucks. Yes, it does suck, BK from last Wednesday. You're on a 2-turn clock. I'll play another Swamp as my land for turn, and then I'll move to combat, smacking Chris back with my commander. On the attack, I'll mill the top 3, and none of them are artifact creatures or vehicles, so I don't get it back to my hand. Afterwards, I play Scepter of Eternal Glory, a mono rock that becomes a bigger mono rock, especially in a monocolored deck. Using it, I cast Endless Atlas, which will draw me cards. Again, really good in a monocolored deck. I'll activate that now and draw a card. Assault Intercessor hits Ryan's board. This will start draining his opponents whenever their creatures die. Over to Kyle, he'll play an island as his land for turn, and he has to attack with Karn, so he chooses Chris, dropping him to 32. Then he casts Dark Apostle, enabling Cascade on future non-creature spells. He passes the turn over to Chris, who draws and plays an island as his land, and then he casts Gene Stealer Locust. This will either shrink or buff creatures that are attacking for reasons. He casts Hull Breach, targeting my Scepter of Eternal Glory to get me off of my extra mana production, which I don't like. I'm upset with you. He moves into combat, swinging at both Kyle and myself. He chumps with Dark Apostle, triggering Assault Intercessor. I take the beats from Turvagon, so he'll gain 5 Tyranids. Kyle forgot to update his life total, but that gets taken care of later on. On to my turn, I move right into combat, triggering my commander on the attack, which gives me a Plasmancer from my graveyard to my hand, because that was among the 3 cards I just milled. Chris takes a couple points of damage, and on my second main phase, I cast the Plasmancer. When it ETBs, I get to go find a swamp to my hand, and then I play it for turn before passing. On Ryan's turn, he plays another tank. And with that, he'll cast his commander, Inquisitor Greyfax. This will pump his team, give him vigilance, and he can start investigating by tapping opponent's creatures. Assault Intercessor smacks Kyle with a chainsword.
I mean, you're Chaos. I have to.
Actually,
it's in the lore.
I was gonna say,
I'm
it's in the lore,
okay,
bro.
I'm LARPing
Sorry,
right
sorry.
now.
I can't argue with the lore.
Over to Kyle's turn, he draws and moves right into combat at Chris with Karn, who chump blocks with a Tyranid, triggering both Karn as well as Assault Intercessor. Kyle gives Karn to Ryan, and then he casts his commander, and he takes 1 point of life off of his talisman.
Abaddon, the despoiler. He doesn't spoil. He does the opposite.
He gets fresher as time goes on, is
Correct.
that true? Remember those bananas that were going brown on your countertop?
Pure
Guess
yellow.
what?
Pure yellow.
On to Chris's turn, he plays Opal Palace, which could give his commander even more +1 counters when it's cast. He then casts Pure Strain Gene Stealer. Its attack trigger could allow Chris to fetch up more lands. Then he casts Sporocyst, where X equals 2, so he'll go find 2 more basic lands and throw them out onto the battlefield tapped. And this Tyranid deck is pretty good at ramping. And then Chris will go into combat at myself as well as Ryan, so we'll take our beats, and this will trigger his Turvagon, getting him 5 more Tyranids, because I wasn't going to block that thing. Chris passes the turn, and on his end step, I will activate my Endless Atlas again, drawing another card. Onto my turn, I play another Laser Swamp. I move to the red zone with my commander, milling the top 3, which includes a Lich Guard and this. And last one is
Another one.
Canopect,
Canoptic.
thank you. Scarab Swarm. I'll bring that Lich Guard to my hand. Chris will take a couple points of damage, and then I'll cast our friend here. Help me out, Ryan.
That is a Scorpec Destroyer.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't even have to read it. It's kind of...
Then over to Ryan's turn. He'll play Launch the Fleet, striving it for 2, targeting his Assault Intercessor and Karn. In response, I activate Endless Atlas to draw a card, because I can. He then moves into combat, swinging his Intercessor and Karn at me, generating 2 1/1 soldier tokens that are tapped and attacking as well. I'll eat one of his soldier tokens, and then Karn will pseudo-trade with my Scorpec Destroyer. I'll take the beats from the unblocked creatures. Intercessor triggers because Destroyer died. Ryan gives Karn back to Kyle, and then he'll draw 2 cards because he lost control. He'll have to discard, and then he passes the turn over to Kyle, who rewards Ryan's generosity by attacking him immediately. Ryan blocks Karn with his first strikey Assault Intercessor, gives a tapped Karn back to Ryan, draws 2 cards, and then Abaddon deals his commander damage to Ryan. Kyle plays an island as his land for turn, and then he casts Chaos Warp, targeting Chris's Turvagon. This will trigger Cascade, thanks to Abaddon and having Ryan lost life this turn. So Kyle will start cascading, and he finds Bile Blight, which is probably one of the best cards he could have hoped for.
So I guess
there's only one right answer.
So I think I'll name Tyranid.
So Chaos Warp will shuffle Turvagon back into Chris's library, and all of those Tyranids are shrunk -3/-3.
All of those died. Chainsword go burr.
Chris will lose a huge chunk of his life total thanks to Assault Intercessor. He'll finish resolving Chaos Warp and finding a Bone Sabers off of the top, so he gets to put that onto the battlefield. And after that powerful sequence of events, Kyle passes the turn to Chris, who plays an island, equips Bone Sabers to his commander, and I try to get political.
Hey,
Friend Ryan.
hello.
What would you say about activating your commander and tapping down that big bulky threat?
Hey, I think that's a great idea.
So thankfully Ryan agrees. He taps down Chris's commander, generating a clue. Chris throws his Pure Strain Gene Stealer at me, removing a +1/+1 counter, finding a forest onto the battlefield tap. I gobble it up with my Plasmancer, which will kill it dead, triggering Assault Intercessor, as well as his commander. And onto my turn, I draw and move into combat, triggering my commander, milling the top 3, which includes a Flayed one, as well as a Night Scythe. I put the Flayed one into my hand and deal enough damage to knock Chris out of the game. Tyranids are scary. I cast their number as Legion, where X equals 3, so I will make 3 2/2 Necron warriors and gain life equal to my artifacts and go up to 24. I pass the turn over to Ryan, who plays a tapped Choked Estuary as his land, and then he follows that up by casting Sicarian Infiltrator. This will draw him a card when it ETBs.
So anyway, I started swinging.
He goes after the man with the highest life total, as a distinguished gentleman should, and then he passes the turn over to Kyle, who draws and plays another island as his land, and then Kyle moves into the red zone with Abaddon at me. I take the commander damage, and with that he'll cast Magnus the Red, triggering Cascade off of Abaddon. So he will start revealing the top cards of his library, until he reveals a Wayfarer's Bauble. Neat. So Bile Blight was better, but how many times could something like that happen? You know? Count your blessings, that's what I always say. He grabs a swamp with Bauble, passes to me, and then before combat, Ryan activates his commander, tapping down mine. But I still swing in and deal him some damage. I then cast Flayed One as a follow-up play, milling the top 3 cards of my library. Afterwards, I play a land for turn, which is a Desert of the Glorified. I activate my Endless Atlas, allowing me to draw a card. And then I pass the turn to Ryan, who plays a Tranquil Cove, gaining him a point of life. Then he casts Marneus Calgar. This guy's great. I mean, look at this guy. He's got really cool armor. Who cares about anything else? He moves into combat. At both Kyle and I'll line up blocks. 2 of my creatures will die, triggering Intercessor, but I had lifelink on Flayed One, so I'll be the same. Kyle drops to 13, goes to his turn, and moves into combat, swinging at both of us. And neither of us block.
And then Magna says, yo, make a spawn. So I make the spawn.
And as a follow-up,
I cast this guy.
This guy will trigger Abaddon. Kyle cascades into Pink Horror, which can start throwing some damage around, or it can make tokens when it dies. Then Ryan helps.
Be'lakor, the Dark Master.
We knew we could count on you, buddy. When Be'lakor ETBs, he draws some cards and loses life. Then he drops Dismal Backwater, gaining a life before passing the turn to me. I move into combat, swinging at Ryan, triggering my commander, which mills a Skoropek Lord. My commander's ability says I may put that into my hand. I opt not to. Ryan takes his damage, and I cast Living Death. Yeah, now you see why I didn't put it in my hand. Living Death is like, yo, big switcheroo. We exile creatures from our bins. We sack our boards, triggering Intercessor 4 and 5 times respectively. Kyle and I lose a bunch of life. Then those exiled creatures from our graveyards return to the battlefield. Kyle got a Dark Apostle plus his blue horror tokens, and I got all of these creatures back. And Ryan does the same, getting a Sanguinary Priest, as well as his Sicarian Infiltrator back. Drawing a card off of that, I'll resolve my ETB triggers, milling some cards. Then Canoptic Scarab Swarm will have Kyle exile his graveyard, giving me 5 insect tokens with flying. Over to Ryan's turn, he drops another tank. Then he casts the Golden Throne. This will give him a one-time I don't lose the game button. And that's definitely not what I want to see here. He follows that up by casting Commissar Severina Rain. Again, bad news for me. He'll go to combat, figuring either way I lose life.
So then I'll just take the...
You'll just take the 1 damage to your face.
My hope is that what you end up doing, maybe I could talk you into it, I don't know, is that you activate that at some point if he's gonna end up like, I don't know, winning. And then you could sack this, deal with 1 damage to him. That's my hope. So I want you to have targets to kill things of your own. So I'm just gonna take the 1.
Okay.
So either way, I'm taking 1.
Yeah, I don't know. My logic might have been flawed. It was like 1 in the morning when we shot this. On to Kyle, he dropped a mountain as his land. Then he activates Dark Apostle, casting his only non-creature spell, being an assault suit. This will allow him to cascade off the top. And as the Gods of Chaos would have, he blows past some really good cards and ends up with a Worn Power Stone.
Nice. Nice. So I get a Worn Power Stone tap.
Quick, now's your chance, Ryan. Drain him for 1 before he takes over the world. With the writing on the wall, he tries to go out in a blaze of glory, swinging at me, but he forgets that I have a Flayed One. So I eat up his 2 creatures, and I gain a little bit of life in the process. Then he passes the turn. On his end step, I draw a card from Endless Atlas. Onto my turn, I draw again on my first main phase. I cast Beacon of Unrest, targeting Assault Intercessor in Ryan's graveyard. I still have to deal with his The Golden Throne, so I think Assault Intercessor works here, especially if he starts sacrificing his own creatures if he's still alive. I move to combat with enough damage to make sure that Ryan has to use his The Golden Throne, so he exiles that, and I deal enough damage to Kyle in the air to knock him out of the game. So Ryan didn't lose the game, but his life total does become 1, thanks to his The Golden Throne. Then he casts the sweet, sweet art of Space Marine Scout. Look at that guy. This will get him a tapped tank onto the battlefield, and in true 40k fashion,
For the Emperor!
he throws his army at his opponent in a blaze of glory. I line up my blocks, and thanks to his own Assault Intercessor, I'll drain him out of the game, which makes me the winner. Yay! And as promised, here's Meatball. We have another special guest today, introducing Meatball's younger brother, Peanut. He's a little bit angrier than Meatball normally. These decks are super cool. Let us know what you guys think of the precons in the comments. There's a bunch of new cards, so we hope we got everything right, and if not, we'll get there. A huge shout out to Ryan from Command Point. Thank you for joining us, and make sure you guys check out his channel and subscribe. As always, thank you for watching.